Hasenbach, and this is my speech. War. There is a war taking place for the souls of men and the building of God's kingdom. It's a war where reinforcements are needed, but tragically, reinforcements aren't coming. My name is Cole Hasenbach, and those reinforcements are the children of the church. According to CNN's Daniel Burke, 85% of those born between 1928 and 1945 call themselves Christians. Yet only 56% of today's millennials do, even though 8 out of 10 were raised in Christian homes. Each successive generation of Americans includes fewer Christians. This next slide drives home this point. According to Lifeway's multi-year study, the number of teens who leave the church comes to about 70%, mainly between 16 and 19-year-olds. Preachers' kids and missionary kids have always been known for being rebellious. Here's my thoughts why. Ministry kids resent the church because the church is the main competitor vying for their parents' time and attention. Also, the continual push many preachers' kids feel to serve the church, coupled with how church activities often trump their own childhood interests, cause resentment. Many ministry kids talk about the constant pressure to serve and be perfect. Michelle Phoenix says that, quote, "The best, most significant, and God-pleasing life you can live is one devoted to His service." But it's a lie. The best, most significant, and God-pleasing life you can live is not work for Him or sacrifice to Him, but a relationship with Him. But where do I fit in all this? Well, although I'm not technically an MK or PK, I am the child of 2 missionary leaders. Before I was born, my mom was the CEO of the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. When she was pregnant with me, she met with the Chinese president to advocate for the release of Bible smugglers and for the adoptions of Chinese orphans to continue. From the time I was a toddler to the age of 12, my father, who was the director of Show Hope, traveled with Stephen Courage Chapman to advocate for adoption. Now he consults with ministry leaders, and my mom leads a discipleship ministry. Because of all the travels my parents' ministry requires, I'm homeschooled, as you can also clearly see. More recently, I went to Berlin, Germany for a conference on the refugee crisis in the Middle East. In the corner. This year, Dad took me to Quantico to sit in on the training of members of the police forces from Uganda and Belize on combating human trafficking. Sounds exciting, right? It is. I know I'm privileged to have these kinds of opportunities, but honestly, I think a lot more about my ordinary parts of my teenage life. A few years ago, all I wanted was more friends my own age. We can all relate. You see, I was either the youngest adult or the oldest child in almost everything I attended. But the reason I don't resent my parents, like a lot of other ministry kids do, is because my parents don't dismiss what's important to me, even if it seems small or insignificant in comparison. What I'm involved in is just as important to them as what they do. They take pride in my activities, so I take pride in theirs. Newton's law of motion comes to mind. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. If they rejected what mattered to me, I'd likely rejected what mattered to them. When I was young, I wasn't bothered that most of my friends were older or younger than me. But when I hit high school, age began to matter. At that point, my parents chose to decrease the amount of ministry-related trips so that I could participate in varsity sports. I believe extracurricular activities outside the church is crucial for teens because it helps expand their world and remove the sense that they live in a disconnected bubble. For me, participating in varsity sports helped challenge my faith and showed me that my faith has to be my own and not just my parents. If kids aren't given these opportunities growing up, where their personal faiths are tested, they feel controlled by their parents, and so they begin to rebel against parent, church, and God. GodQuestions.com says, quote, "The resentment built up against God and the faith played into the natural rebelliousness of the teenage years, which is why many preachers' kids leave the faith during that time or immediately upon entering college." Patty Richards, an author for HealthBully.com, perfectly summarizes the need. Teens need to feel a sense of belonging to feel good about who they are. Those who do not have at least a few close friends often suffer from isolation, insecurity, and a poor self-image. When church kids begin turning away from God, parents should be warned not to demand more ministry engagement. Instead, they should stop and consider how they can engage in their child's world and interests. According to the book of Matthew, God left the 99 to go after the one. Of course, all children make some bad decisions. Parents need to give them room to do so. Of course, with boundaries and consequences that match the crime. But be careful not to micromanage them, because the natural response of control is control. You push, they push. Remember Newton's law of motion. Kathy Hardy-Williams says, quote, "And while teens undoubtedly will make mistakes, parents need to trust them to make some of their own decisions and learn from their missteps." My final word of advice to parents is this: pray. Don't be complacent. Your kids are constantly under the attack of the enemy. The devil wants nothing more than for your kids to resent you and their ministry. I am grateful that my parents care about what I care about. My friends, helping me prepare for prom and cheering me on during sporting events. Because of all this, I feel free to be a normal kid. And this makes me confident when God shows me my purpose in his kingdom, I'll be ready. I often heard my mom tell people, I want to care about the world's orphans as long as I don't leave my own children as orphans. It's good to know we take priority. I'll conclude with two promises from Scripture. Luke 6:38, give and it will be given to you. For the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. And from Luke 16:10, whoever can be responsible with very little can also be responsible with much. Basically, care about the little things in their world, so they'll be open to care for the world and fight the war with you. Thank you for your time and attention. Have a good day.